Hello friends, welcome to the Cold War Prepper. My name is Lee, and that subject that comes up all the time has raised its ugly head again. So I want to have a quick discussion about gold and barter. And what happens is all too often we use trite, meaningless phrases that don't mean crap, and we use them thinking we're being really, really brilliant. Something like, I don't value gold. Can't say that. You got to say, can't eat gold, okay? But the same time you say, I can't eat gold, therefore I don't want any, I want this knife. Can you eat the knife? If we're going to say that the way we're placing a premium on something is whether or not it's edible, then let's be consistent in whether it's edible or not. Instead of this one I don't value because I can't eat it, but this one that I can't eat, I do value. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. That's illogical. Step two, once you say that doesn't make any sense, that's illogical, you say, but I can use bullets, let's say, to go out and hunt. I can use gold to go out and buy. Well, you can't with me. Well, guess what? There's a lot of things I don't want that you have that you think are going to be valuable. Just because you place value in it does not mean that I do. Just because I do doesn't mean that you do. So we have to find, how are we going to have this discussion? And another good one, if you think about it, just think about this for a minute. 2 is 1 and 1 is none. 2 is 1. So if I have 2, that's really 1. But 1 is none. So therefore, 2 is none. Does that make sense to you? But that's a good common prepper saying, right? If you take it out to its logical conclusion, 2 is none. If you use that formula, 2 is 1, 1 is none, therefore 2 is none. Say what you mean what you say. So this whole thing always comes up around the subject of barter, okay? And one of the things is you have a scenario in mind. You have a point in time in mind. It may or may not be the same point in time or the same scenario I do. So let's talk about barter. Do you remember this? 2020? How about this in 2020? How about these in 2020? How about these in 2020? I owned a store. Texas Preparedness Group was did some work at the Belton Expo in February of 2020, and my wife thought I was crazy. This guy came up, and we were right on the, we just heard about this thing that was coming out, and it didn't sound good. It didn't, we couldn't predict anything. This guy came up while I was sitting there manning the booth and said, "Hey, I have these pandemic kits that were excess inventory for the military, and I need to get rid of them. Do you want them?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll take them." My wife says, "What are you going to do with them?" Well, I owned a store at the time. And so all of a sudden the lockdown happened, and guess what? I could not keep pandemic kits in stock. They had nitrile gloves, they had a mask, they had hand sanitizer, they had everything you needed. I called the guy and said, "Hey, do you have any more?" He says, "Yeah." And so I ordered another pallet at twice the cost of what I ordered the first ones for. Went through that pallet in less than a week. Called the guy again and said, "Hey, can I have another pallet?" He said, "Yes." Now it was twice the price of what I paid for the one previous to that. And so typically at my store, I had a 100% markup on a product. But I felt these were so critical, I only marked them up 25%. Then the city of Round Rock came to me and they said, "Hey, we know you have these kits. Can we buy some from you?" And I just gotten that new pallet in. And I said, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to mark them up 1% to pay for my cost of doing business and everything else. And I'll sell them to you at cost plus 1%. So I sold that last pallet full at basically no income. It was just cover my costs. And but that was so I could help out our local EMS, firemen, police, and everybody else, because they didn't have any. Well, later on, as we got further into this, that stuff became a little bit more available, okay? So the value that we had on it at the very beginning was not the same value we had on it at the very end. So in a timeline of an event, things are going to have various values. So let's talk about the different events, okay? If we have a financial meltdown, these are worthless. I can eat these, they are designed to be eaten, okay? But these are going to be worthless because potassium iodide is not going to protect me against a financial meltdown. It's not going to protect me against an EMP. It's not going to protect me against a lot of other things, but I have them, okay? This is one scenario and only one scenario. And so it has a very limited application. If we talk about financial collapse, yeah. Are these going to be valuable? Absolutely. I bought a rifle with 13 of these. Since I bought the rifle, these have doubled in value. The guy really made out well, but I also did too because I got what I wanted. So this right now is worth about $25. This right now is just over $50, probably about $60. This is 1 gram of gold. And I've used it to buy things. In a financial meltdown, valuable. In a nuclear war, probably the first 2 to 3 weeks, no value whatsoever. Maybe later on, as we get into the timeline, they might have value. They will have value. So, first thing we need to do is when we talk about these things is we need to say, what is the event that we're planning for? Remember in Doomsday Preppers, they always said, what doomsday event are you planning for? And they always told them, this is what I'm planning for. Well, that's the reason we have these discussions. I plan differently for civil strife. I plan differently for financial meltdown. I plan differently for nuclear warfare. Each one is a different plan because each one has different priorities. Okay? That's one of the things we don't do in our discussions is we don't say, this is my scenario that I'm preparing for, and this is where I am in the timeline. So if you read Selko Begovich's books about his 1 year in Bosnia during the Bosnian War, his year in hell, read Furfal Aguirre's books about the financial meltdown in Argentina. Read Venezuelan Prepper's books about how he was in Venezuela and escaped. Read those people who were in World War II and escaped Nazi Germany and the importance they placed on jewelry, especially gold, silver, and diamonds, and how they used that to buy their way out. Each one of those is a different scenario. Each one of them had different applications of gold, silver, diamonds, jewelry, other things. And they primarily wore their gold and silver and diamonds in jewelry. And if you have this, you're probably very late in the timeline, whereas jewelry is going to be very early in the timeline. So even there within the gold and silver realm, where you are in the timeline dictates as to what each one has as far as value. So that's the event. Now let's talk more and more about timelines. One of the things that Selko talks about is very early on, people needed matches and lighters. And then, they became a little bit more available as things went on. He talks about firewood. If you had firewood, you were a king. If you had charcoal, you were a king. They resorted to burning furniture later on because there wasn't anything to cook with. He talks about how the candles at the beginning were extremely expensive. And then as they melted down, they became even more expensive because they didn't have anybody who could do anything. So I have a candle making kit. Why? I'm going to take the old burnout candles, melt them down. I spend my money on wicks. So I'm going to take that melted down candle, pour it into a candle former with a wick in it, and then I've got a new candle. So I'm not investing as much in wax as I am in wicks, if that makes sense. Same thing in timelines. Let's take a nuclear detonation. So you've got two things. You've got a radiation sensor, okay, and then you've got a Geiger counter. This is more valuable early on because you have high doses of radiation. Once it gets down to where it's going to be less than, say, 10 rads per hour or even 5 rads per hour, then you want a Geiger counter. Geiger counter goes down to millirads. This doesn't do millirads. This is in multiples of 10. This does in millirads. So it's important to know which device you need at what point in the timeline of that event. Anything except for a nuclear explosion, these two are worthless. All kinds of money that I've spent on nothing at all. I guess in the sense of those who don't use reason, I guess they would say, I can't eat these. Now, let's go with location. Where are you? If you are in the desert, then some of the items you're going to need are going to be quite different than somebody who's in a forested area, which is quite different from somebody who's along the banks of a river. Here in Central Texas, we've had a drought here recently, and water has had a premium. I am sure that there are other locations in the U.S. that don't have the same problem with water that we do, and therefore they don't place the same value on it. We typically get 3 cuttings of hay a year here in Central Texas. This year we were lucky to get 1, let alone 2. And so hay is very expensive. That means that if you don't have hay, you can't feed your cattle. So our cattle production has gone down. So location has a lot to do with what you're going to prioritize as far as barter items and everything else. The next one is the season. Okay, so in the winter, a wool blanket has far more value than it does in the summer, especially here in Central Texas. A warm jacket has more value in the winter than it does in Central Texas, than it does in the summer here in Central Texas. Shorts have more value in Central Texas in the summer than they do in the winter. So season has a lot to do with the value of any one item that you're looking to barter. The next one is market variables. As production of things increase and availability increases, the value goes down. Simple law of supply and demand. Of course, if there's a great demand and very few availability of the product, price goes up, demand goes up. Same thing with this, right? We saw that in 2020. So you have to take a look at what are the market conditions of whatever it is that you want. Then, of course, you also have the person that you're going to be trading with, and what is it they want, and what do you have that they want. So this is going to be based upon gender, it's going to be based upon age, it's going to be based upon ethnicity, what region they're from, some of the habits that they have. Let's take gender as an example. I've heard people say stock up on feminine hygiene products. Well, women are 50% of the population, okay? So now I'm going to stock up on feminine hygiene products for 50% of the population. Whoops, but wait a minute. 1/6 of those women are below the age that they will need those feminine hygiene products, okay? 1/3 are above the age that are going to need those feminine hygiene products. So now I've got 1/3 plus 1/3, or I'm sorry, 1/3 plus 1/6, which is basically 3/6, or 1/2 of that 1/2 of the population needs those feminine hygiene products. That's only 1/4 of the population. Same thing with cigarettes. People say, oh man, get cigarettes. Only 18% of the population, according to the last census, smokes. So that means you're automatically excluding 80% of the population from your barter because of what you have that you want to give away. Now, if you are going to do that, get the TOPS system, okay? So the TOPS system, basically, these are tubes. When I was working as HR in the homeless shelter, the homeless people would get those and they'd get the stuffer. They'd go out on the streets and pick up butts off the ground, squeeze the tobacco out of those cigarette butts, put them into the stuffer, and then stuff those into these tubes. And they had a relatively new cigarette as far as they were concerned. Do I invest in tobacco? No, but I have a whole bunch of tubes and I have a stuffer, okay? Same thing. What about alcoholics? People are going to place a lot of credence in alcohol. Do they care which one of these two they get? As long as they get something, you know? Where is that as far as value? How about this? You know, I would say that this is something that people are going to want, especially people with children. Silco talks about Bic lighters. Well, I learned a lot from Silco, so instead of Bic lighters, I spent for my barter items, I have these, okay? I have a complete Zippo kit, so it's a Zippo lighter that's windproof, plus lighter fluid, plus extra flints. That's going to be something I can use if somebody needs it. But here's another thing, as we start talking about, you know, what is and what isn't. Remember, it's not the value you place on what you're giving away for barter. It's the value that the other person places on it. Okay, so for an alcoholic, those whiskey bottles are very important. For me, I don't drink. I don't place any value in it. I don't smoke. I don't place any value in tobacco. So a lot of the things that you're saying, you know, that you can eat, I guess, that have value, to me, they have no value. To a lot of other people, they have no value. Don't try to give me 9mm. I don't need 9mm. I need 45 ACP. Okay. Now, let's take this scenario and expand it out just a little bit. What if I needed some antibiotics, okay? Either from this company or from this company, okay? And so I say, okay, you want those? You want some of these? Give me some ammunition. You say, well, I don't have 45 ACP. I say, well, that's all I want. Okay, I don't want 9mm. But you have a friend, you have, let's say, 9mm. You have a friend who has excess 45, and he's willing to take your 9mm, trade it for his 45, and then you can bring that 45 to me and trade it for an antibiotic. Now we've got something going. I think that's going to be more realistic of what's going to happen in a post-apocalyptic world. You're not going to have those direct one-on-one exchanges. It's not going to be as simple as you have vegetables and I have whatever. It's going to be more of you have something I want and I know somebody who has what you want, but I got to find somebody who has what he wants and will take what I have in order to get what he wants, in order to give to the guy who wants it, in order to get what I want. See how complicated this is going to be? It's not going to be a very simple transaction of I have gold, or I have fruits and vegetables, or I have ammunition. It's going to be a very complicated process where it's going to be who do you know who knows who has what somebody else wants that you can then use to trade with somebody who has what it is that you need to trade with the person who has what you want. Very complicated, very convoluted. And so I think sometimes we do a disservice by trying to oversimplify things, and they just aren't going to be that way. Life is going to be extremely complicated, and the inability to communicate is going to make it even worse. It's going to exacerbate it. So what I would encourage you to do is when we have these discussions about what is good for barter and what isn't good for barter, tell me, okay, what is your scenario? Is it a nuclear bomb, or has the stock market just gone up? Is it kinetic warfare that we've just been invaded? Is it terrorism? They just took out our power plants and now we have no electricity. Tell me the premise of what it is you're prepping for. Then tell me where we are in the timeline. Are we the day after it happened? Has it been a week now? Has it been a month? Has it been a year? Are we in the recovery stage? Are we in the rebuilding stage? Are we in the chaos stage? Where are we? So that I can get a better idea of what is it that has value at that point in time for you. Tell me where we are as far as location. Are we in a desert environment, in a coastal environment, alongside the Mississippi River, where catfishing is great? Tell me these things so that now we can have a meaningful discussion over what is and what isn't barterable, okay? So I hope that gives you an idea of why sometimes I get a little bit reticent when people say, I don't want this because I can't eat it. And I'd say, you know what? I can't eat this either, but it's valuable. This is going to have value at some point. Maybe not at the point that you have in your mind, but during the recovery phase, it might have value, okay? How about this, okay? What do you think this will go for? Either freeze-dried ground beef or canned ground beef. Do you think that's going to be valuable at some point, regardless of the scenario? Or are there some scenarios where it's going to have more value than others? What are your thoughts? Okay, so just some of Lee's ramblings about some of the useless sayings that we use in prepping that we really need to be a little bit more articulate about. And the second one being talking a little bit more about barter and what is it that we're going to be bartering for and why? Why not just give what you need now to the maximum extent that possible instead of, I don't even buy these things anymore. You know, I've got 3 of them. I'll give those away once that's done. I'm investing in things that I think I'll need: antibiotics, toilet paper, food, water purification. Have a brand new water catchment system for my roof. So now every time it rains, I get 400 gallons worth of water that I can then purify and use as I see fit. And that lasted me through the summer, so I was pretty happy with that. Okay, do me a favor. Remember, we're all in this together, so we can come out the other side together. Please be kind, polite, and respectful to each other, because togetherness is the key. Take care. Bye-bye.